Imagine someone you love,
Yeah.
right, walking up to you with a beautifully wrapped box.
Okay.
It has this ornate ribbon, the paper is just perfect, and they are holding it out to you with this huge, generous smile. So you pull off the ribbon, you lift the lid, expecting some incredibly thoughtful gift, but when you look inside, well, it's an itemized invoice.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would be terrible.
Right. It's a literal bill listing everything you've ever done wrong, every apology you owe, and like the exact amount of groveling required to clear your debt.
That completely upends the feeling of the interaction. You go from feeling loved to feeling trapped in, a fraction of a second.
Exactly.
Because the generosity was really just a Trojan horse for demand.
And what's terrifying is how often we actually hand these boxes to each other, fully convinced we are giving a gift. We wrap up our demands and judgments in this shiny paper that we call forgiveness.
We do. We absolutely do.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are jumping into some fascinating notes and excerpts from a discussion titled The Architecture of Forgiveness and the Ego's Daydream.
Yeah, featuring insights from Javon Para and Sue Kim.
Right, and they're analyzing a text called Song of Prayer, specifically looking at part 2, paragraphs 3 and 6. And the goal of our deep dive today is to really uncover these hidden, kind of manipulative ways we use the concept of forgiveness.
Because it's not what we think it is. Para and Kim are zeroing in on a concept that sounds kind of impossible at first glance, which is forgiveness to destroy.
Which just sounds like a total oxymoron.
It does, yeah. Because we are so deeply conditioned to view forgiveness as this ultimate healing virtue.
Hmm.
But this isn't your typical self-help stuff. They are offering a really profound psychological breakdown of how we unconsciously weaponize being good.
Weaponizing being good, that is such a striking phrase.
Right. It's about looking at the hidden architecture of our daily interactions. To even begin talking about genuine peace, Javon Para argues you have to look at the counterfeit version you are probably using right now.
And this forgiveness to destroy, it's defined as masking pure arrogance with a display of humble suffering.
Yes, it is a highly strategic psychological posture. When someone uses this, they aren't actually releasing a grievance. They are parading their injury in front of you.
To establish moral superiority, right?
Exactly. They're basically saying, look at the pain you caused me, and look at how incredibly noble I am for bearing it.
So the character that immediately comes to mind here, which Para heavily emphasizes, is the martyr.
Oh, the classic martyr. Yes.
Think about, like, a time you had to cancel plans with someone last minute. Instead of them just being naturally annoyed, they hit you with, no, honestly, it's completely fine.
Right, the heavy sigh.
Yeah, I know I'm not a priority for you right now with your new job. I'll just stay in by myself tonight. Don't even worry about it.
That is the perfect example of the invoice in the gift box. On the surface, the words say, I forgive you, go have fun.
But underneath,
The mechanism underneath is designed to inflict maximum guilt. What the martyr's doing is, sacrificing their own well-being strictly to hold you accountable.
so they are generously taking the hit on purpose.
Right, so they can place it on a secret emotional scoreboard.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. I imagine a lot of people listening might say, wait, sometimes I do that just because I hate conflict. I'm just trying to keep the peace, not trap someone.
Sure, that is the ego's defense of the behavior. But you have to look at the actual result. When you play the martyr to, keep the peace, what you are really doing is creating a dynamic of severe inequality.
And genuine love requires equality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Genuine connection requires equal footing. The martyr absolutely does not want equality. The martyr wants leverage.
Oh, wow. Leverage.
Yeah. If I am the one suffering nobly because of your actions, I am the good person, and you are in my debt. It is a power play perfectly disguised as grace.
It keeps you safe from criticism because, after all, you're the victim.
Precisely.
So the martyr role basically gives us a shield and a sword. It makes us untouchable. But if playing that role ultimately leaves us feeling miserable and disconnected because, you can't have real intimacy with someone you view as a debtor, why is this our default setting?
That is the big question.
Right. The discussion in our source material shifts to the origin of this deeply ingrained need to punish and be punished, and they trace it back to a concept of foundational cosmic guilt.
Yeah, Javon Para asserts that this entire mechanism, like the ego, the scoreboard, the martyrdom, it all stems from a foundational belief that we caused a separation from oneness.
Okay, separation from oneness sounds a bit esoteric. Let's ground that. What does that actually mean for, like, a secular person just going about their Tuesday?
Good point. Think of it as the fundamental human condition. It is that innate, quiet terror we all have, that we are completely isolated, um, fundamentally flawed, and totally disconnected from everything else in the universe.
Okay, I think everyone can relate to that feeling on some level.
Right. And in the psychological framework, the ego equates that feeling of separation to a catastrophic crime. It believes we literally destroyed God or destroyed perfection just to become individuals.
Oh, yeah.
You don't even have to view it religiously. Psychologically, it is this massive, unmanageable trauma of feeling utterly alone and believing it is entirely your own fault.
Which brings in So Kim's notes on the preemptive strike. She explains that because this foundational guilt is so overwhelming, we basically live in subconscious terror of the punishment we believe we deserve for being so flawed.
Exactly. So the ego plays defense. We either lash out to punish others first, or we embrace the martyr role to willingly accept punishment.
We make ourselves suffer to tell the universe, hey, look, I'm already miserable. You don't need to strike me down.
It is entirely a displacement strategy. The ego cannot handle the weight of that massive, abstract internal terror. I mean, if you sat with the pure feeling of existential isolation, it would paralyze you.
So the ego externalizes it.
Yes, it takes this unmanageable fear and projects it onto highly manageable, really mundane daily conflicts.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, and I want to push back a little. It feels like a massive leap, or honestly, a bit of a cop-out,
Yeah.
to say I'm holding a grudge because my partner left the dishes in the sink again due to, existential cosmic guilt.
That's a fair point.
Isn't it just disrespectful to leave a mess in a shared house?
Leaving the dishes is disrespectful, yes. But the scale of your reaction is what gives the ego away.
The scale of the reaction.
Right. If it were just about dishes, you would say, please clean this. And when it was clean, the emotion would vanish. But, that's not what happens.
Oh, definitely not. We take the dishes and build a whole courtroom case about respect.
Exactly. We make it about our value in the relationship and our partner's moral character. We manufacture an entire war out of the dishes.
Wow.
The ego uses the mundane conflict as a safe, contained arena to process that deep-seated need for punishment and defense. It keeps you obsessed with the dishes to completely distract you from the terrifying internal void.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. The sheer intensity of our petty arguments is the giveaway. We are essentially fighting a proxy war.
We are?
And Para describes the ego that orchestrates these proxy wars not just as a bad habit, but as a vast fractal-like structure.
The word fractal is crucial to understanding the mechanics of this. A fractal is a geometric pattern that repeats exactly the same way at every scale.
Like a fern leaf.
Yes, perfect example. If you zoom in on a fern leaf, the tiny offshoots look exactly like the whole leaf. Para is arguing that the ego operates the exact same way.
So the small conflicts mirror the large ones.
Exactly. The fundamental psychological machinery you use to aggressively jump someone for cutting you off in traffic is the identical machinery used by nations to justify geopolitical warfare. It is the same shape of blame and separation, just at a different scale.
And because it's a fractal, it constructs our entire reality. Para calls this human experience the ego's daydream.
Right, the daydream of suffering.
He uses this brilliant analogy about watching an apocalyptic television show to explain why we actively dream up our own misery. When you sit on your comfortable couch and watch a show about zombies, scarcity, and brutal survival, you are using your imagination to create extreme contrast.
You watch the horror on the screen, and suddenly, your boring, safe living room feels incredibly valuable.
Right. The ego does the exact same thing with our mental reality. We generate internal suffering to create contrast and meaning.
Which is why Para makes a really vital distinction between a traumatic event and internal mental suffering. A painful event occurs in physical reality, and then it is objectively over. But the mental reenactment of that event...
The looping narrative we obsessively play in our heads.
Exactly. That is the daydream of suffering. It is a mental construct.
It operates exactly like mental doom scrolling. Think about being at a beautiful park, but you are completely lost in your phone scrolling through infuriating news.
You're entirely missing the sunshine, the breeze.
The real world right in front of you, yes. Because you are trapped in a digital nightmare. The daydream of suffering is doing that inside our own minds. We constantly replay old arguments or invent future disasters.
And the mechanism there is energy consumption. That constant, running, mental commentary consumes all the cognitive and emotional energy you actually need to build genuine connection.
Or love.
Exactly. Para points out this is the unseen mechanic that leads to long-term devastation, like divorce.
Wow, divorce. Just from the internal narrative.
Yeah, because over years, you stop interacting with your actual partner. You're interacting with the mental avatar of your partner that you've built inside your daydream. You are having arguments in the shower with a ghost.
Having arguments in the shower with a ghost, that is incredibly relatable and also terrifying.
Really is.
Which means true forgiveness, in this context, has nothing to do with looking down from a judge's bench and pardoning someone for their crime.
Absolutely not. Pardoning someone still requires you to hold the moral high ground, which is just another fractal of separation.
So what is true forgiveness, then?
It is the total release of the judgment itself. It is the act of putting the mental phone down, exiting the doom scroll, and refusing to fund the daydream of suffering with your attention anymore.
Okay, if the solution is simply to put the phone down and stop judging, I imagine a lot of listeners are thinking, great, I'll just focus on being a deeply spiritual, forgiving person.
Right. That's the natural next thought.
But looking at Sue Kim's notes, trying to intentionally be a good spiritual person is actually the most dangerous trap of all.
It is dangerous because the ego is incredibly adaptable. If it sees you trying to escape the daydream through spirituality, it will simply co-opt your spiritual journey.
And turn it into a new weapon for separation.
Exactly. So Kim points out how profoundly difficult it is to find a pure sense of innocence, especially for people burdened by what she calls Catholic shame.
Which, importantly, she isn't just applying to Catholics. It's a stand-in for any deeply ingrained cultural or religious programming that hardwires you to believe that simply existing makes you inherently flawed, dirty, or guilty.
Right. When you carry that heavy burden of inherent guilt, the ego takes spiritual concepts, which are meant to unify, and uses them to build a taller wall.
So how does that look in practice?
Well, a classic example is proudly labeling yourself as being on a spiritual journey or, doing the work.
On the surface, that sounds positive.
It does. But psychologically, it is frequently used to imply a destination that your partner or friends haven't reached. It's a polite way of saying, I am evolving, and you are toxic and stuck.
Wow.
It is just spiritual superiority disguised as enlightenment.
It's the shiny wrapping paper on the invoice again.
Exactly.
And paragraph 6 of Song of Prayer takes direct aim at how we use this superiority through what they call bargaining and compromise. They dissect a phrase we hear constantly in modern therapy culture. I will forgive you if you meet my needs.
That phrase is the ultimate ego trap.
But wait, I have to push back hard here because, I will forgive you if you meet my needs sounds exactly like setting a healthy boundary.
I know, it really does.
If someone is mistreating me, why shouldn't my forgiveness be conditional on them changing their behavior? Are Kim and Para actually saying healthy boundaries are toxic?
It is crucial to separate physical boundaries from psychological forgiveness. If someone is harming you physically or financially, absolutely remove yourself from the situation. But the text is talking about your internal state of peace.
Okay, so the internal state.
Right. When you say, I will forgive you, meaning I will let go of my anger and be at peace, only if you change your behavior, you are creating a zero-sum game of slavery. You're making an economic transaction.
How so? I don't quite get that.
Because you have just legally bound your emotional well-being to their future actions. You have outsourced your peace of mind.
Oh.
Yeah. If they fail to meet your needs, you are now obligated to suffer again just to prove they violated the contract.
So whether you are the martyr sacrificing to induce guilt or the person demanding a behavioral sacrifice to grant absolution,
both of you are trapped in a transactional prison. You are negotiating the terms of your ongoing suffering. You are not releasing it.
that completely flips the script on how we manage relationships. If you are keeping a ledger of who owes who, even if you call it holding boundaries, you are still actively funding the daydream of suffering.
You're just trying to negotiate a more comfortable room inside the prison.
Precisely. So Kim emphasizes that we have to abandon the performative desire to orchestrate a fair outcome, because the ego loves fairness. Fairness requires a judge, a jury, and the ledger.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
So if we strip away the fake forgiveness, if we abandon the martyr role, and if we drop these conditional spiritual bargains, how are we actually supposed to perceive each other? I mean, if boundaries and bargains are just prison negotiations, how do we escape?
The exit door, according to Sue Kim, requires radically redefining how we view sameness. She states that the ultimate goal is to reject any form of forgiveness that leads to anger, condemnation, or comparison.
And instead, look for what she poetically calls the sunlight and glow of heaven.
Yes. In practical terms, this means finding sameness in innocence, rather than sameness in guilt.
Because normally when we bond with people, it is entirely through shared grievances, like we both have terrible bosses or we both survived this trauma.
We bond over the invoice.
Exactly. Bonding over shared trauma is still validating the reality of the daydream.
Right. The true spiritual work is recognizing that underneath all the armor and all the awful behavior, the core innocence of the other person is identical to yours.
But I mean, that feels impossible when someone is actively being cruel to you. How do you see the innocence in someone who is actively trying to ruin your day?
You don't have to instantly become a perfect being of pure light. The text offers a very practical stepping stone.
Okay, good.
Even if you aren't ready to feel pure love for your adversary, you can just recognize that you are both playing the exact same game.
The proxy war.
Yes. When someone is attacking you, they are lashing out because of that foundational terror we talked about earlier. They are fighting a proxy war to manage their own unmanageable guilt. Recognizing that your enemy is just as trapped in their terrified little ego as you are, well, it drastically reduces the heaviness of the conflict.
Javon Pera has a brilliant physical metaphor for this mechanism. He compares our individual personality, our specific ego, to looking through a peephole in a door.
It's a great metaphor. Think about the mechanics of a peephole. It is a tiny, distorted lens. When you look through it, your vision of the outside world is warped.
It is incredibly narrow.
And you're usually looking through it because you are afraid of who is on the other side of the door.
Yeah.
The ego forces us to view all of reality through the peephole of our own specific grievances, our past hurts, and our desperate need to be right.
So to see the sameness and innocence that Kim is talking about, you have to physically step back from the door. You have to realize that the person you are screaming at on the other side is also just a terrified person, squinting through their own tiny, distorted people, absolutely convinced they are about to be attacked.
And when you clearly see the mutual terror, the anger naturally dissolves. You don't have to force yourself to be nice. The context of the interaction fundamentally shifts.
And that is the ultimate takeaway. The instruction isn't to layer a new, shiny spiritual behavior over your anger. It is to structurally dismantle the way you perceive the interaction.
By stepping back from the peephole and recognizing your anger as just the ego's fractal defense mechanism, you reclaim the power to choose. You can consciously choose to exit the daydream.
Which requires abandoning the comfort of being right in exchange for the freedom of being at peace. And for the ego, well, that is a terrifying trade to make.
It really is.
Let's bring all of this together for you listening. This deep dive has dismantled a lot of what society considers highly functional, normal behavior.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. The core insight from Para and Kim's analysis of Song of Prayer is that true forgiveness is never a transaction. It is never a display of how much pain you can graciously endure, and it is absolutely not a spiritual contract you hold over someone until they change their behavior to suit your needs.
It's about stopping the cycle.
Right. True forgiveness is the active, conscious intention to stop reenacting your trauma in your own mind. It is stepping back from that narrow, fear-driven peephole of your ego, putting down the emotional scoreboard, and refusing to hand out any more beautifully wrapped invoices.
It is the realization that you have the authority to simply stop funding the proxy wars.
Exactly. So I want to leave you with this final thought to carry into the rest of your week. If our reality is just a projection, a script written by the ego entirely to keep us distracted, defended, and feeling separated, what does your current biggest grievance say about the script you've unknowingly written for yourself? And more importantly, what would happen to your life if you simply refused to recite those lines tomorrow?